Welcome back to another video on Gearsaw Studios, and today I'm going to be showing you how to build yourself a Christmas clock tower. Looks good day and night, and it's the perfect centerpiece for any Christmas themed town. So without further ado, let's investigate how we'd go about this. Starting off, we need ourselves a very simplistic foundation. 1 block above the ground, smooth sandstone, 21 by 21. I only have 1 wall in, but still, we want to make this 4 blocks thick, or really 3, and we'll add more blocks later. So now, add this 3 by 3 all the way around, and then we want to, 3 blocks in, add these end stone pillars. You can see they have walls and such, but that's not terribly important right now. From here, I go 3 blocks, candy cane, 3 blocks, candy cane, 3 blocks, another identical pillar. You don't have to make any of these things exact. In fact, I don't recommend you to copy 1 for 1 because it'll just slow you down, and if I make a mistake, you'll make one too. So I recommend not copying 1 for 1 and make your own changes as you see fit. From there, we want to have these walls right here, 1 block sunken in, and they're made completely of mangrove stripped logs. They're a nice desaturated red, and they work well for that Christmassy feel. From here, on either side, we have these windows, nice and tall, and we can pause for a moment and look at these walls. Remember, they're going to be symmetrical on all sides, so keep that in mind. And now that we have all of that, we have these candy canes in place, we add a line of stairs above them, we finish off these pillars, and then we add another line of end stone bricks right here. And now that we have all of this in place, mirror this to all 4 sides to make a simple rectangle. Right here, we have a bit more to do with the foundation, and then we can go on to the second floor. Right here, just some slabs. The slabs go all the way around, 3 blocks wide, nothing to them. Then, we go up here and we add some upside down slabs like this, all across, and then a full block. We do this all around in order to make sure that there's a proper divide, so that way we have a little balcony. Also, I have these little protrusions here, and you can see how they work. By the way, I recommend making those a little bit more smooth. But right here, we have some upside down slabs going in a circular shape, and then stair, and then slab above those, and blocks. These are to hold little Christmas trees, and you can see how they work here. They just add some greenery to the build to make sure it doesn't look too sterile. Then we have a very small balcony. It can't be decorated, and it's made of spruce slabs. The entirety of our build is probably going to be using spruce slabs for its interior. And we also have, for a railing, some more spruce leaves. Notice why I needed slabs for this, so that way at least they're somewhat usable. But they go up and down, and you can see the little patterns on them, carving some pieces in. Essentially, we just hang them like they'd actually go in real life. However, we need to decorate them, and this can be quite tricky because how candles work. We can place some resin on them, and that's decent, but the problem with candles is that you can only place them on a solid block, which means any place you want a candle, you have to place a full block, place your candles, then you have to replace the full block with a leaf block. So this can get pretty arduous, but if you're in creative mode, /set block at current position, candle. Very simple. And of course, you can light them whenever. Make sure you light them because of course lighting. But now we have this interior part. Notice the small trees. You can pause to look at them or make your own design. Make sure it's still walkable. And right here, we have basically a square. And then on either side, we have walls. And then right here in the middle, we have some stripped mangrove logs. We carve out an entrance on here, and this will suffice for now. So let's do all that, and then we can move on to the third floor once we have some decorated leaves and trees. Right here, we have the second floor complete. Of course, we have all the leaves, but now they're covered in resin. These ones you can leave bare, and then we have some windows on the sides that don't have doors. I'll do this to the first floor later. But anyways, let's pause and take a look at this. We have some walls, some lime terracotta, and then we go up to some black concrete powder with birch buttons, then some lime concrete, and a redstone block. Pause if you want to copy it exactly. This is the same on all 4 sides, excluding the leaves. Then, for our other sides, we have windows, and notice the use of shelves in order to make sure it's a bit more rounded. And now that we have that in place, we can go up to the third floor. And there is one thing that I'd like to note. The bottom here is mangrove, and right here is red concrete. The next floor will be red wool. We're doing a bit of a gradient as we go up, with each floor being a slightly different shade of red. Until we reach the top, it is 4 stories, with red concrete powder, the lightest shade. So let's continue on with that. This floor will be slightly smaller than the last, and then the final floor will just be a clock. Right here, we have the third floor, and this one's by far the easiest. Starting off, we have this area here. We go in 1 block, and we start with our lime concrete. Either side, we have walls. Then more endstone, more lime, and then we have this arch here. Very simplistic. Red wool for the walls, and for the windows, copy what you did for the second floor exactly. I recommend using stained glass panes, and I'll teach you how to do that later. So for now, just add the wooden part. And then, above that, some jungle shelves, and then we add ourselves this almost crown of oak. You can see how it's all stairs wrapping around, but then on the sides and the corners, we have ourselves some slabs to make it a bit spikier. So by doing that, we make sure it's, well, more interesting. And then behind it, we have some spruce leaves growing on some podzol. Then we are ready for our final floor, the 4th floor with the actual clock. And this one needs to be quite tall because, well, the base of this build is quite stout, so we need to make sure this thing is visible so you can take it seriously. If you make it too short, like only make it as tall as those candy canes go, then your build is just going to look a little bit goofy. So make sure that it is nice and narrow. Right here, we now have ourselves the final floor, and you can see it's just a simple clock. By the way, added some glowstone and a bell here because, well, it looked cool. But right here, above the crown, we have more spruce, and it rides up on the candy cane pillars. Then for our walls, by the way, ticks are frozen right now, so if I do tick unfreeze, you'll notice my concrete powder is not falling. I'll talk about that in a moment. But we have these candy canes going up, and they go up about 5 blocks, and then I surround them in pale, endstone, more pale, and then we go up right here to more endstone. From here, we'll build the roof in a moment. But for now, we have to worry about the clocks. And right here behind the spruce, if we remove them, we can see how it all works. And of course, we're building with concrete powder. You have to worry about gravity. Fortunately, the simplest solution is just add string to your build, because, well, you can place it. Right here, if we shave it all away, red concrete powder, then more of it, but we also alternate between green terracotta and green concrete in order to make sure the build is just a little bit more varied. Then, at the center of our clock, it's a 3x3 sea lantern, then white concrete powder, white wool, and then blackstone wall for our hour hand, and then another brick fence for the minutes. As you can see, it is precisely 3 o'clock. And because the way fences and walls connect, you can only display very specific times with this, unfortunately, unless you increase the scale of your clock and get to use stairs. In that case, more power to you, and you'll have a better, more accurate one than me. But this is the smallest you can make it go. Then, more of the red concrete powder mirrors the bottom, and then we're back at the endstone. So all this is really nice, but we also have to worry about the roof. Right here, where we had that black concrete powder, we're going to revisit that design motif along with that oak and jungle mix, and then we'll have probably a dark prismarine roof with a crimson dormer on it. Right here, I made a few modifications to the build simply because it was just a little bit too tall on the top floor. But you can see it is now very cute complete. So let's start right here. This is where the endstone used to be, but I moved a little bit of the pale onto it and added a quartz pillar under it because of some other ideas, but you don't have to add the quartz. Then we have some endstone, and you can see 2 blocks, 3 slabs, 2 blocks, 5 of the black concrete powder, and then we have the oak here. Pause if you need to take a look. And then we have some red wool behind it with a sea lantern, before finally ending off in a dark prismarine roof. You can see it is not pointy, and intentionally so. Additionally, we have this little crimson window up here, and some glowstone at the bottom. There are some space constraints, but fortunately, our viewers are not going to be seeing the glowstone unless you're in creative mode or using an elytra. So I'd say we've done a pretty good job right here. Right now, we just need to add in these windows, and they're pretty simple. So first, get yourself some glass, and let's go for a very Christmassy vibe here. So yellow, white, and maybe light gray for this. And then we have it radiate outwards like there's a nice candlelight. And we can see right here how that works. Of course, make adjustments as needed. You can do this for any window, and I will be adding decorations to these windows as well. With our windows in place, you'll also notice that the build is now very well lit. As you can see, this is unbrightened, and I'm going to brighten the video anyways, but here's the thing. When your build is just out in the open, you need to make sure it's well lit, or else it just looks like part of the background. We can see over there in that village, because the trees are unlit, it just looks like, oh, I planted a bunch of cherry trees and I got lazy. Which, to be fair, that was a lazy build, but still. When we go inside, we can see it's still unfinished, but first off, we do need some birch shelves across to hide the candy canes from the inside, because they just don't look good. So now on the inside, it looks good, while we still get to keep the outside version, which does look good. But you can see lighting issues. We always need to make sure it's well lit. So we have some glowstone here, this star, and a bell. And we also have just a bunch of other random things we can do. By the way, you can't actually place candles on that, so be careful about that if you set block. But here, we have a bunch of glowstone. On the windowsills, we have candles. Notice the shelves and slabs being used to make them. Then, when we go up, for these corners, I replaced the ground with a trapdoor with a sea lantern underneath to keep that well lit. Then, these windows have more candles. I did the candles all the way up. Of course, we have hidden sea lanterns in the bushes, hidden sea lantern behind the clock, hidden sea lantern here, glowstone here, and then at the very top, we actually have carpet with another sea lantern. And all this makes sure that the build is well lit. That way it actually draws attention, especially because a clock tower is usually the center of attention in a town. So by doing that, we make sure that everyone can see it. But of course, we do have an interior. And as I said, the shelves are important. But it really comes down to this. What do you want to use this build for? Is this meant to be a survival base? Or is this just meant to be decorative? If it's decorative, do you want to do the whole thing? Or do you just need to do the first floor? So you have a lot of questions with that. And generally, I'd also say you do need ladders to traverse this. A spiral staircase in the middle is interesting, but ultimately it would take up so much of the build that you probably couldn't do anything. By the way, do not use the clock tower floor, because if you have to edit anything, you might mess up the outside of the build because of concrete powder gravity. Since there's no windows and it's so small up there, I just recommend making the third floor the final floor. And I'd say this can be a bedroom, maybe this is a storage room, down here is just a nice pretty room. By the way, you can put some banners on varying blocks and maybe a cactus flower in order to make yourself a present. Of course, the cactus flower looks a bit too much like a flower, so it might not work, but still, it's certainly worth a try if you want to. But pretty much from here, let's try to make this a festive survival base. Right here, we have ourselves a completed build with a little bit more lighting attached. I smoothed out some of the details, added some more sea lanterns and candles, whatnot, and well, it's just well lit in this case. So now, let's look at the inside. By the way, if you want to make a city surrounding this, I recommend 3 blocks cobbled deep slate with stairs on either side, and then add dark oak to be your sidewalk. This will make sure that it stays interesting. Alternatively, for something more realistic, I'd use polished tuff. Up to you. But anyways, that's a little bit beyond the scope of this build. Let's go in. And it's just a survival base, very simplistic. If you have anything specific you want to add, of course there's a lot of room to do it on the first floor. And also, I don't recommend copying my things exactly, because if your build is ever so slightly off, then my stuff usually won't work. So here, we just have a bunch of utilities. We have ourselves a Christmas tree with some carpet surrounding it. Right here, we have a tree skirt made of mangrove shelves. Then some shelves to put our ladders on, better than trapdoors because they're more neutral texture. And right here, we have a chandelier in the room. Along with that, we have 16 double chests, 5 furnaces, some striped carpet, and a crafting table. Add flower pots to be your decoration, and of course chandeliers. Nether brick fences work very well. And then at the top floor, ender chest, some bookshelves that don't do anything, and an armor stand. Additionally, we have a bed included. If you have anything else you want to include, go right ahead. And you can see how the ceiling curves upwards in order to have this long lantern. So hooray, we have a completed Christmas tower. So if we go outside, we can see we have resin, we have the Christmassy vibe, red and green, whatnot, and this is definitely a centerpiece for a nice Christmassy town. A little bit better than whatever I did for this gumdrop village a long time ago, but you can see you could definitely make some very similar styled buildings using your current house knowledge, and you could make something really beautiful out of this. Either way, it's the end of today's video. If you enjoyed this video, remember, please like and subscribe, it really helps me out. Either way, enjoy the rest of your day. Gearsaw